Play.
Hello, hello. Welcome to Talking Tennis and welcome to the WTA show. And it's WTA Weekly. And it's a momentous one because we're in the week before Roland Garros and everyone's very excited. As I assume our guest also is, this is Tumaini Carayol, who is the tennis correspondent for The Guardian. How are you doing, Tumaini?
Good, thanks. Thanks for having me. I am very excited I was excited about Rome and excited about Roland Garros and how things pan out here.
You're so excited about Roland Garros, you're there already.
Yeah, no, I'm at home, but I've got a Roland Garros plaque behind me. Yeah.
Excellent. I thought we'd address that now, just to assuage any doubts. Okay, when are you planning on flying over, or are you not going to be able to go this year?
No, that was a joke. I'm here now. I'm in
you are? All right.
I'm in the press room right now, and yeah, I'll be here for the next 3 weeks, pretty much, and yeah, looking forward to it.
You're going to be camping out in the press room.
Yeah, but getting out as much as possible to see it, to see it live. So yeah, it's going to be good.
John is putting important information about your other sporting interests in the chat, but I don't think you necessarily want to talk about that right now. So maybe we should move on to the tennis. So obviously, you've obviously been in Rome. You were there covering the tournament. So we did a show last week, kind of talking about the halfway point. So we'll probably be focusing more on the stories from the second half of the week. But I suppose the big headline is obviously the final, Elena Rybakina winning against Anhelina Kalinina. What were your thoughts on the final? Did it kind of, apart from how it ended, progress how you expected it to?
I mean, given how Rybakina had played throughout the tournament, despite the various retirements, I thought she went into the match as the heavy favorite, and she kind of commanded it, and I think as we've seen with her, constantly her serve, controlled the, just set the tone, and yeah, it went as I thought it would, and obviously Kalinina was not in great shape, and as the match kind of unfolded, you saw it. You saw her physical issues come to play, but I expected Rybakina to win, and it's just unfortunate the way it panned out, and unfortunate the way a few matches in her run to the title panned out.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Sort of, it's kind of going to go down a little bit, even when looking back on it as a slightly fortunate title for Rybakina. Doesn't mean it's not earned, because she put herself in the last 8 of the tournament, or last 16 of the tournament, because I think she also benefited from retirement there. But she won the matches to get her to this position so that she could benefit from it. And she had a good win against Ostapenko, even with the rain delay. Ostapenko did not handle the situation as well as Rybakina did, and Rybakina was the better player in that first set, regardless. And Ostapenko is a very, very well pedigreed clay court player, as we know. So I don't want to take too much away from it, but yeah, I mean, a title, but do you also regard Rybakina as being slightly fortunate?
Oh, for sure, definitely she was fortunate. But as you said, she was there, and she was, at the end of the day, she was a player who was physically fit when others weren't, and I think that's part of it, right? I was actually, despite 3 retirements, I was still really impressed with her. I thought her win over Vondrousova, I thought that was a really tough match in slow clay conditions that suit Vondrousova. I think they played at night as well, which it just didn't seem like, in terms of the conditions, it seemed like everything suited Marketa, and she destroyed Andreescu in the previous round, love and one, I think. But she just, again, she stepped up and again, served well, just hit through the conditions on the court. She's found like a really, I think, good balance in terms of just the way her approach in terms of high percentage attacking tennis, and you always hear her coach constantly telling her to go for big targets, and you hear that with a lot of big hitters and players with big serves and whatever, but not everyone can do that. But she seems to just know how to play within herself, but still, control the baseline and attack. But again, I was actually also really impressed with her against Swiatek, because Swiatek played. I thought she was incredible, really, to the point where she was up a set and a break and seemed to be cruising, and just the balance between attacking and defense, and just the difference between their movement was very apparent. But Rybakina just kept at it, and dug out some really tight service games in the second set, and just kept in it after going down a set and a break. And then she by staying in it, she forced Swiatek to maintain that level until the end, and Swiatek couldn't. And obviously then in the tiebreak, Swiatek got injured, and that that was incredibly unfortunate. But I was impressed by how she stayed in it, and I don't think against Swiatek and Rome on clay, I think a lot of players would have probably just kind of, if not mentally checked out, they probably would have thought down a set and a break it was kind of done, but that's her mental. That's how strong she is mentally, and she continues to show it this year.
Yeah, I agree. I think Rebecca's performance against Swiatek was fantastic. The way that she kept herself in it. I don't remember there being many easy games for Swiatek in that match, even in the first set that she won 6-2. I think that was probably one of my favorite 6-2 sets I've ever watched, because of the rallies they were able to produce. And yes, Swiatek's level was just that little bit higher, at least for the first part of the match, but completely agree the way Rybakina kept in it. I do think if Swiatek hadn't been injured, she probably would have still edged it. But
I think so too,
yeah. But credit to, as you say, Rybakina for getting through it, and that's a really, really good point. Also, Vondrousova, great point. That match, I probably, like many others, thought that Vondrousova was going to win that one. The conditions suited her much better. She's a force for upsets on slow courts, and that just didn't happen. So yeah, Rybakina had a great tournament. Swiatek, obviously, injured in that match. Are you hearing anything at the minute around how the injury is progressing? Are there any kind of major concerns rumbling around, or things being kept quiet by the Swiatek camp?
I think it's still being kept quiet, and she's obviously taken a few days off, and my expectation is that she's gonna, she'll head to Roland Garros, and then, see how it is on the practice court, and we'll see. It's particularly unfortunate at this point of the season, because I felt clearly Swiatek hasn't completely replicated last year, but by any means. But I felt like she was in a place where if she came to Rome and dominated and did what she's done on this surface and in the conditions that really suit her, it would have, I don't know, it could have kind of propelled her back up and just given her the confidence against the top players that was maybe lacking. And I mean, as we saw against Rybakina in the second set. So it was just really tough of all time for this to happen, just at Rome and just before Roland Garros. But I still think that if she steps on the court in Paris, she has to be the favorite given what she's done there so far at such a young age.
I completely agree. Even a recovering Iga Swiatek is going to be the favorite, depending on how physical a player she ends up playing at some point in the draw. I think that Swiatek should, yeah, as you said, should be the favorite. Going in, she's going to be comfortable. I mean, I obviously not an expert. I'm not a medical expert. I mean, the injury, the retirement seemed more precautionary than anything else, which is a positive sign that she should recover. Certainly, I think if anything more serious would have come out by now, given it's been sort of a few days since. But Yes, I am not a medical expert. My name is not Dr. Carter. But yeah, I think she's we've just got to see how it goes with the injury. But unless she plays someone like Sakari on form Sabalenka or Rybakina, someone else who could, or I'm trying to think of like really physical players who are gonna grind it out. I don't see it being a major issue as the tournament progresses. It could be very similar to sort of how Barty won Wimbledon a couple of years ago, managing to do it slightly injured. That's kind of how I see it anyway.
Yeah, it will be the interesting thing, at least to me, was that, you know, after she withdrew from Miami, she mentioned, I think during the clay season, that she hasn't really had many injuries, and she hasn't really had to, you know, manage them and then come back from it and, you know, try to find her level, you know, immediately. So this is another challenge, and, you know, it's part of being a tennis player. I mean, how many times has Rafa come to Roland Garros injured and, you know, and come away with the title? So I mean, obviously, if it's serious, then, you know, there's, or, you know, if it's genuinely affects her play, then there's not, you know, there's only so much you can do. But if it's a case of managing and maybe adapting, as you said, like as Barty did at Wimbledon, then it's another interesting challenge for her, and as she tries to, you know, maintain her spot at number one, and as, you know, the player to beat.
It's so interesting. There's always this weird default that we have to compare Swiatek to Rafa, even though she's only won 2 Roland Garros titles so far. But the distance between her and the rest of the field on clay is such that the comparison always seems to come in, and we're always so sure that she's going to be the Roland Garros favorite. I suspect there may well be another clay court force coming in at some point, but we'll have to see on that. But yeah, I always find it interesting whenever Rafa enters into the mix. We talk about Iga Swiatek.
And I actually don't normally, I don't like doing, like, I find that comparison it's a bit too much. You know, people do default to it and you know, mention Rafa, you know, compared to Rafa a bit too much. But when you're in Roland Garros, it's hard to think of anyone but Rafa, to be honest. But yeah, I think that she's, if she was to win Roland Garros again this year or next year, whenever, it's the very, 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 very few players would have achieved what she's done at this tournament at such a young age, particularly, you know, female players. So yeah, I do think we underestimate. I think people have underestimated just how incredible some of her achievements have been, and if she continues to maintain it, then it's. I agree. I think that at some point there will be another clay court force or someone who can challenge her. If, you know, whether it's someone new or whether it's, I don't know, a player, you know, one of the few players who have troubled her this year. But just her achievements at Roland Garros, at Rome, on clay, and stand. I don't know. It's incredibly impressive to me, and the fact that she was one at 21 years old. She was 1 match away, 3 games away from having won every major clay court title already. It's impressive to me.
You should probably end up winning. You should probably eventually win Madrid, maybe. Who knows? But yeah, as you say, so few women. I have won 3 Roland Garros titles. I've just looked it up. I mean, all time, if you don't include the Open era, it's 13 players who've won 3 or more. If you just look at Open era, then it's 7 players who've won 3 or more Roland Garros titles in the women's single, which is it's interesting that that's such a hard tournament to have repeated success at, for men and women, probably because of the physicality of the surface. You're right. It's grand title, and I would say that I have a view, and I haven't necessarily haven't aired this very often. I don't know what your thoughts would be on it. That if you were to make a long list of all-time greats of the game before you really zeroed in on the GOATs at the top of the list, So if you make a long list of about, say, 30, 40 players, I would start with anyone who's won 3 majors as your kind of baseline.
Yeah. I think I'd agree with that. In particular, players who have won that number of majors and also won so much outside of them.
Yes, which she has, and
yes, exactly.
we have these other, very few people are going to go on that streak like she did last year. I am well known, a very open book of being a massive Iga Swiatek fan, so I don't want this to derail the conversation too much. Maybe if we try and balance things out a little bit. If we say that worst case scenario for Iga, the injury is going to play a part in this Roland Garros draw because it's not out of the question. Who do you see as other potential contenders for that Roland Garros title? Because narrowing it down is going to be tough because without Iga, it becomes quite wide open.
Yeah, I think given just how the form and consistency of the other 2 players on the screen right now, I think they are right up there, and I think Sabalenka will, although I don't think she hasn't passed the 3rd round of Roland Garros, I believe.
That's right. Yeah.
I think she'll enjoy Roland Garros more than the conditions in Rome, and also just the fatigue, coming from the Madrid Open. I think I would expect Sabalenka to make a deep run at Roland Garros, even if she doesn't, contend for the title or reach the final. But beyond them, I think there's still a group of players. I think Jabeur but it depends on her fitness and physically how she is. If you'd asked me before Rome, I would have said Vondrousova. That would be a dark horse for me. Just again because of how she enjoys the slower conditions and just her craftiness, and I really enjoy watching her on clay. But again, even now, if you look beyond these 3 players who have been outstanding this year, there's so many players who could just burn red hot and go through the draw.
Yeah.
Whether it's, I don't know, Lightning striking twice with Ostapenko or someone else,
Yeah,
What do you
I'm
think?
wondering whether Ostapenko's probably going to have a slump because she usually has a massive peak and then drops off for a few tournaments and then comes back. But you can't rule her out. Would you put Krejcikova in the mix, or are we having some concerns about her form given she had a couple of weird early losses?
It was her clay season has been weird, and I would have certainly after the way she won Doha. I think it was Doha. Just the way in beating 4 top 10 players, and just Sabalenka, Swiatek. I have to say I expected more, and particularly when she was talking herself up when she spoke to WTA Insider and just clearly wanted more recognition for what she was doing as well. But you have to keep on winning and you have to back it up, and it's been a difficult clay season for her. I certainly think she could, and she's certainly one of those players who, if she makes it to someone like Swiatek, or to me, she can do anything. But it's been, I think it's been, particularly as this is her first full clay season after winning Roland Garros, it's been pretty disappointing for me.
Yeah, it kind of has been for me as well. I can't rule her out as a contender. You're absolutely right, but she's not got the ideal momentum coming in. One of our regular contributors, Max, usually brings up Coco Gauff and wondering how well she's going to do this year, given that she's the defending finalist. How do you see Gauff panning out? I think with a 3-3 record on clay so far this season, I'm not optimistic she's going to get much past the 3rd or 4th round.
No, it's been a very difficult clay season, and kudos to her. She was very open and quite honest about the fact that her struggles in Madrid, and the fact that she's trying to change her game. She's trying to be more aggressive and attacking, and clearly the big issue in her game the biggest issue, in my opinion, is her forehand, and the fact that so many players have zoned in on it and are targeting it and breaking it down, and it doesn't hold up in terms of just the swing, how big it is, how quite hitchy it is, how easily it's rushed, and it's been a major issue, and I think that's the part of her game, that the fact that she clearly has no confidence in that shot at the moment on the court has affected the rest of her game. I think she's good enough in the rest of her game to perhaps, I don't know, lock down and outperform our expectations. But I agree. I don't. It's definitely, she's clearly hit kind of a wall in terms of her progression, and the thing is that she's young. She's still 19. She's young enough to make the necessary adjustments and change her game. I think any player at that age can make massive changes in their game, which would not be the case maybe in 3-4 years. But yeah, I wouldn't put her on the list of contenders for sure.
I think, yeah, we're on the same page with Coco Gauff. Just one more thing before we kind of move on to some bigger picture topics. Obviously, you're in Paris right now, so you're probably seeing sort of what other media producing, particularly local media. How much hype is Caroline Garcia getting over in France? Are they being realistic given her form, or are they trying to promote her as a potential contender to the maybe less those fans who maybe follow the tour less closely?
To be honest, I'm not sure. Since I just arrived today, actually,
Okay.
I haven't spoken much with French journalists, but I've seen quite a few big billboards of her, and of course expectations will be high. I expect her to play on Chatrier every match for us as long as she's in the tournament, and that's obviously a court that in the past she'd asked the organisers to schedule her anywhere but Chatrier. So it's obviously it's going to be another tournament with massive pressure and expectations. Obviously, she hasn't been playing as well, and just to me, I just find her approach, the gung ho full attack, it isn't always sustainable. That there has to be a middle ground sometimes. You can't always be standing on top of the service line to return serve. But we'll see. She's also, obviously, she's a former quarter finalist here. She's handled the pressure in the past year and found something, at this tournament. But it's going to be tough, clearly.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. Interesting that she doesn't like Chatrier. So that might be see plenty of. She'll probably be scheduled on Suzanne Lenglen a fair bit, and yeah, it's interesting to say that her attacking style isn't sustainable. It's not a point I've thought about before. But you're absolutely right. It's something we've said about other players. I mean, Elena Ostapenko comes to mind. Very different kind of attacking style, but nevertheless, it's very similar in its kind of gung ho, no real plan B to it. Yeah, Garcia tends to be, as you say, a bit further up in the return, is a big hitter. So yeah, you're right. I think when it really dips, it shows with her. So, I mean, I think for her sake, in terms of having an enjoyable home event, would like to see her doing well, reaching the second week. But yeah, at the minute, doesn't seem to be a contender. But then we didn't think she was much of a contender this time last year, and then something seemed to shift around Wimbledon time.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see what happens.
Yep.
So you've written a couple of things in the last few weeks, thoughts on some things that have happened recently. So the first being that obviously there's been a lot of discussion around the going back to Rome, it being a 2-week tournament now, Madrid the same, now 2-week-long tournament. And the potential kind of consequences for that, it doesn't seem to be a universally popular choice. It seems strange to say that that tennis fans online are complaining there's too much tennis, or at least it's too spaced out. There's too many days with tennis in. But yeah, do you want to take us through maybe your thoughts on the 2-week Masters that we've just seen in the last month or so?
Yeah. So the main reasoning behind them is the ATP actually
Interesting.
wanting to create a bigger events. That the Masters, obviously the slams are run by the slams, and as well as in you know alongside the ITF. But the ATP want their Masters 1000 events to be big and to kind of be almost mini slams, and bigger in terms of revenue and in terms of interest. Um, and the clearly the solution was to increase the amount of days, and to replicate to an extent replicate what the slams produce in terms of being 2-week tournaments. And I went into Madrid with an open mind. I was curious to see what the players thought about it, what different people, not just the players, but people behind the scenes, fans, and it's just I felt it was just too long. As you said, the matches were so spaced out. In the first week, it would feel like it felt like it didn't really even by the weekend it was only just starting, and then by the second week, it, the order of play and the daily program was so bare, and there were only a couple of matches each day, and you add that to in Rome where the scheduling was different, and that they played the semifinals and finals back to back, and it was I don't think it worked really, and it's tough. It's funny in tennis we talk a lot about how long the sport is, and oftentimes people are talking about length and arguing about best of five or best of three, but I feel it's so hard for people who aren't diehard tennis fans to follow a tennis tournament unless it's a slam, to follow a tennis tournament for 2 weeks and to be fully engaged, um, for that entire period of time, and to constantly go back and check the scores and watch matches. That's a lot of effort and a lot of work. And doing that two tournaments in a row is, I just don't think that's that's just it's hard being a tennis fan, and that almost makes it harder in my opinion. And I guess from the players' perspective as well, I don't think a lot of them didn't like it, particularly as there was, and there may be in the future, but there was no immediate spike in prize money in accordance with the more time they spent on, you know, spending at the tournament. The more they had to pay for more hotel rooms, they have to pay for their staff for longer, all these different things that just what made it a completely different experience to playing a Masters 1000 or a WTA 1000 for 1 week.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's definitely the logistics to it. I know what you mean because I'm like, because I was about to ask her, what is the difference between 2 weeks of a 1000 and 2 weeks of a major? Because obviously 2 weeks of a major, we don't necessarily get major fatigue at the end of it. But I'm wondering whether it's because the first round of a major is bigger. There are more players involved. It's a last 128 compared to a last 96 with buys for the top group, for the top seeds, which means that, of course, the matches are going to be more stretched out, whereas majors have a lot more to kind of cram in. So I think by the halfway point of a major, you kind of almost welcome the slower pace by the second week.
Yeah.
As a fan, maybe also as a journalist, I don't know. I've not worked on but I think that might be the key reason. I've not really felt the fatigue from it. I think I've struggled more to find matches I'm interested in the early kind of rounds, but sort of still by the weekend there was still plenty of content to keep me going. But I completely agree with you about the risks to players going for another week or so. So rather than doing Stuttgart, Madrid, Rome in what was previously would have been a three maybe 4-week bounce, it's now going to be 5 weeks solid for these players, and yeah, the risk of injury is going to be higher. it's a very physical sport, and I can't think of many other sports that kind of insist on pushing its athletes that hard, almost day after day, for such a long period of time. So I do agree that the risks in that area haven't really been considered, and we're seeing it in Rome.
Yeah. I was just going to add, and one of the reasons that the ATP gave for wanting to increase the tournaments, the length of the tournaments, was that the players would have more rest days between matches. But Swiatek and Murray and a few other players raised the point that even though they're not playing, they're still on. They're still training, they're still in tournament mode, they're still, I don't know, just have the general anxiety and nerves that you carry with you even when you're not playing a match that day. And so it's not the same as taking time off and having a proper rest. And so I think I'm not sure if it is the case, but I wouldn't be surprised if that, not necessarily the actual matches, but just the whole 5 weeks of being in tournament mode for someone like Swiatek, if that played a role in her eventually getting injured, or I'm not sure, but I think it's possible. And yeah, I don't think it to me, I don't think it worked well. And maybe they can make changes to it, and maybe it will improve. So certainly Indian Wells and Miami has a different feeling to it for me. But yeah, we'll see.
I suppose Indian Wells and Miami are their own self-contained thing, though, because
Yeah,
after the Australian Open, everything's building up to that, whereas nothing is building up to Madrid and Rome, because you've got Roland Garros 2 weeks later, which is the tournament everyone wants to go to. So that even if you try to make them a bigger deal, they're always going to get overshadowed, and that's how it is with a sport that has big events that everyone wants to win. That pretty much, in theory, anyone could win. So that's probably what it's going to be. And it's interesting what you're saying about the ATP, and maybe this is a discussion for Mario and Damien's ATP show later. I would be interested to hear their thoughts on this, on the ATP driving this change. I would say they probably haven't considered all the options. It doesn't surprise me that maybe the ATP doesn't really think about the WTA athletes, certainly the reputation that they've got.
And I guess I'd also just think that they probably think it's still worthwhile to go ahead with the format, given what they gain in terms of finances and in terms of the stature that they want the tournaments to have. Maybe that they think maybe their answer would be that it's a necessary, that this is a necessary evil, or the consequences, the negative consequences, are worth it if the profile of the sport grows.
Well, we know it's going to happen again next year because it's confirmed for 2024. It'd be interesting to see what they confirm for. I would probably say they haven't learned from it yet, so probably we'll get it again in 2025. It'd be interesting to see what they decide for 2026.
Yeah.
I would imagine the players will have time to feed back about it.
Yeah, they're planning to expand other tournaments as well. I think from next year, Canada and Cincinnati will both be longer. We'll both have the same 12-day format. I'm not quite sure how it will work with Canada, actually, in terms of the two tournaments being in different, the WTA and ATP being in different cities, in Toronto and Montreal, and Shanghai will also, again, I'm not sure how Shanghai will work this year, in terms of it being a 12-day tournament in the men's draw. But yeah, it looks like this is how things will be for the coming years. Maybe one day that they'll change, or maybe this is the new normal.
Yeah, I mean, Shanghai being a 12-day tournament with just a ATP draw is going to be even more like spaced out.
Yeah,
it's going to be even fewer tennis, less tennis.
We'll have more space than matches, really.
Indeed, maybe plenty of promotion for the doubles, though. That if they did that, we could maybe looking for silver lining there. Yeah, I think this could be a topic for a much longer discussion. I think there's fascinating about ideas for tennis strategy going forward. That's possibly something worth discussing longer term. But I mean, whilst we're talking about tournaments, obviously you were in Rome, but how do you find Rome as an event to kind of be at, to visit, to be in the mix of?
In terms of just the general the grounds,
Hmm.
it's one of the obviously it's one of the most beautiful tournaments, and the energy of the crowds and the atmosphere, and I enjoy it. I like the tournament a lot. I think that's in the past there've been, I think players find it challenging in terms of the organization and just the way things are organized at the event. And I think from the media side, that's also been the case sometimes. But I do in terms of the actual event, I enjoy it. I like the center court, which I don't know if it kind of reflects on TV, but it's a very the stands are very like vertical almost. It feels like you're right on top of the play. It just the stands just go up, where instead of in other tournaments it's more you feel further away from the court, whereas it feels like you're on top of the court in Rome, which is a completely different just viewpoint of tennis. But I enjoy the tournament a lot. It's definitely one of my favorite stops on the road.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds great. I certainly, when I ask around, Rome seems to be a tournament that a lot of people want to visit. I agree with you. It's interesting design. I hadn't realized that's aesthetically what it was like inside the stands, and that's got to be a great view of a tennis court. I think the whole design is almost very Colosseum-esque, unsurprisingly,
Yeah.
for the location. But yeah, a lot of people would definitely want to go to Rome to watch the tennis, although a lot of that is probably also down to they would then also be in the city of Rome.
It looks nice.
Yeah, there we go. That's obviously a view from Man on the Ground in Rome, where we had it. And then obviously something else that sort of broke. I think it broke whilst we were actually doing a show of one of the semi-finals was Simona Halep and an additional doping charge, which you also wrote about. Anti-doping and everything around it is a complicated world to try and unpick when you're not an athlete, and it's still incredibly complicated to try and deal with if you are an athlete, by the look of it. But yes, so do you want to explain a little bit more about what's going on here, Tumaini?
Yeah. During I think it was during Madrid, Halep finally spoke out publicly about the her she testing positive for I can't even I can't pronounce.
Roxadust. Oh,
Yeah. But yeah, testing positive, a positive doping test in October. I just realized I'd never said that word. I've written it, but I've never said it out loud.
I don't think I've said it properly either, to be honest. I think
Yeah,
there's another
but
couple of letters after dust, but anyway.
yeah, but yeah, so she tested positive in October, um, for a sample that was taken after her first run loss at the US Open. I mean, one of the worst losses of her career, ironically, to Darius Sneaker. And but then the months went by, and she said that her, she'd been the tribunal that had been scheduled had been twice delayed, and the ITIA, International Tennis Integrity Association, had told her that, well, had informed her that they were doing extra tests and etc. And that was the reason for the. Thank you, Roxa Dustat.
Thanks, Miles.
Thank you. And yeah, and so those were the reasons for the delays. But yeah, and then in Rome after, so she was critical of them then during Madrid, and the time she was, you know.
Oh, we fear to have lost Tumaini. We'll see if we get it back. But yeah, obviously he's been describing how Simona Halep's been very critical of the way the investigation's been handled, how long it's taken. Had a long conversation with Damien about this the other day on stream. It seems to be that it's standard length, but maybe just because it's the norm doesn't necessarily mean it's right. That players should be waiting this long. But yeah, I would say that that's it's this extra doping charge is going to help. Hi Tumaini, you all right?
Yeah, sorry, the internet just dropped for a second. I'm back on my phone. Yeah, but what I was saying anyway is that at least my opinion on just the whole case is firstly it's difficult to have one without the facts. I'm waiting for, Halep says that she's going to have the tribune is finally scheduled for the end of this month. Actually, I mean she gave the date of the 28th of May, which is the first day of Roland Garros. But I also heard that they don't normally do them on Sundays. So it could be, during the week, sometime in the next few days. So I think it's hard to have an opinion, in my opinion, for me, until they release they normally release some summaries or even quite comprehensive, retelling of what the different arguments are from her side and from the ITIA and everything. But I will say that I think that anti-doping governing bodies should be doing their best to ensure that this is a quick and smooth process, and so that players are, in the case that they do overturn their bans, that the provisional suspensions that they're on, that it doesn't cost them so much in their careers. And again, I think when, and this is me assuming that they will actually, give a comprehensive, summary of what happened in the tribunal, which I think they have to, particularly now that it's so high profile and it's, there's clearly concern and discussion over the length of time it's taken. But yeah, until that's released, I think, at least for me, it's difficult to jump to a conclusion. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. It's with any kind of case, sporting, legal, you have to. We don't have all the facts, and the reality is that Halep, the ITIA has released the charges. It's not released the deep what the evidence are, and it doesn't necessarily need to until proceedings have been completed. I think that there is definitely something to investigate. The fact that there is, I don't know whether the irregularities are to do with the testing positive, whether they're linked or separate. But I think it's possible we could say that regardless of Simona Halep's guilt or innocence in the matter, and I'm not taking a stance either way on it. I'm definitely not saying one thing or the other about what I think on that topic. This is highlighting a long-standing structural issue with the process, but you could say. So I don't know if that's more where we want to go with, regardless of the truth of the exact situation. This is highlighting a potential issue for athletes.
Yeah. And what is clear anyway is that this seems to be quite, which I wrote, it's quite catastrophic for her case, really. That it's provisionally suspended for one anti-doping rule violation. There's a second one that's extremely rare, and either way, it's quite startling. And yeah, and one of the issues going forward is after this upcoming tribunal, if there's going to be another more delays while they discuss the second anti-doping violation, but I assume there will be. So hard to see her, it's hard to see there being a final, decision on whether she plays, whether she's banned, how long she's banned for a while. Yeah.
And it's going to have a massive impact because, I mean, Halep's now over 30. She's actually received about, actually, I think Maria Sharapova received about a similar point in her career, age-wise. And we saw what happened when she came back 18 months later, around 18 months later, I think. Definitely later part of 2017, considering she was banned at the beginning of 2016. The fact that, yeah, she could still play and she had some good one-off results, but she struggled to kind of get back to the very top. And it's very possible that we could end up seeing a very similar situation with Simona Halep, which it wouldn't necessarily, it's not necessarily the best thing for tennis, because Halep is an interesting player, a great personality to have around. So we'll have to see what happens, but that might be an indicator of where things could go.
Yeah, and I would just say I do think it's probably one of the most serious in anti-doping cases that a top prominent player has been part of, and particularly in recent years. I think it's even obviously Sharapova is much more prominent and popular and famous, so it's a bigger deal in terms of popular culture and whatever. But I think it seems even more severe and than that case. And yeah, it's yeah. Again, I'm very, very, very curious to see the summary and the long the PDF when that drops out. I will be one of the first one to look at it.
You'll be all over it, and you'll probably write something, a really great analysis of it once we've got it. So as I introduced you earlier, you are the tennis correspondent for The Guardian. So those of you watching, definitely worth checking out their tennis coverage and Tumaini's tennis coverage for them. It's always excellent, and definitely have a look, especially if you're international, so outside the UK, maybe less familiar with the publication. But obviously, we've got your Twitter up. Is this where we can find you on Twitter?
Yeah, it is. Nowhere else. I'm trying. Honestly, I haven't been tweeting much recently, but I'm trying to tweet more.
It's always interesting when you do tweet, though. I think sometimes quality is better than quantity, and you bring all the important stuff. Obviously, commenting on the recent Rafael Nadal news there. Okay, so this is where we can find you on Twitter. But yeah, thank you so much for coming as a guest, Tumaini. I think I just want to end on a kind of a positive note. What is the story that you're most excited about or most interested in at Roland Garros?
I mean, to be honest, on the WTA, it's definitely that it's Swiatek, it's Sabalenka, it's Rybakina. Whether they can continue this consistency, whether Swiatek can, maintain her spot as the number one and as the leader, whether anyone else is going to come and, upset the balance that they seem to have found. I'm just curious to see if this is something that in 2 years we'll look back on as like a short moment, or if these players, whether it's all three of them or two of them or one of them, can just continue to be consistent, to go deep in tournaments, to win tournaments, and to kind of to dominate, really.
That's definitely, yes, I agree. That's the big question right now. Is this a one-off flash in the pan for 2023, or is this the next 2 to 3, 4, 5 years set in the WTA? And it'd be really interesting to see how that plays out. All right, thank you so much for coming on, Tumaini. It's been really great to have you. Looking at the chat, everyone's loved having you on, and on this episode of Talking Tennis. Hopefully you'll come back again. I'm going to stay on for a bit just to talk some more WTA and promote what's happening next. But appreciate you're kind of in the press room at the minute, and you're probably trying to keep a low profile. But thank you so much for coming on and sharing your insights with us about the variety of things that have come out in the last week or so.
No problem. Thanks for having me. And if you ever want me on again, let me know. Thank you.
All right. I'm sure John will reach out. Thank you so much, Tumaini.
Right.
All right, here we go. So it's just you and me chat for the next few minutes. So yeah, great insights from Tumaini Carayol. Definitely one of the best tennis journalists out there. It was really, really exciting to have him on today. And we've gone up by 1 subscriber during the stream. So hello, new subscriber. I hope you do not regret your choice, and that you stay subscribed to us for more tennis content. We've got lots of exciting things planned this week as we build up to Roland Garros. And of course, we will be bringing you some of the action from Roland Garros over the next over those 2 weeks. Roland Garros starts on Sunday, and I'm super excited for that. So what's coming up at Roland Garros? Producer, do you want to get that tweet up? Do you want to get a tweet up with a schedule for the week so we can kind of run through it? I know what I've got coming up, but I don't want to be selfish and make all this about me. So I know that obviously you're probably all dying to find out what my pre-Roland Garros power rankings are going to be. They're coming out tomorrow. I think this is definitely going to be the hardest list I had to put together, ironically. As I said in the previous stream, there were about 14 or 15 players. Trying to get them into top 10 and then into an order was really difficult. But I think you'll be very interested to see what comes up. And probably not going to be surprised who number 1 is, but maybe the rest is going to be an interesting order. Might not be hard to work it out if you know me pretty well. But I'm excited to share it with you, and I'm excited to see whether I'm proved right or wrong and who I end up managing to jinx ahead of this tournament. So that's what we're going to be doing. I know that there's another interview coming up with Liam Brody's coach, which is a massive, obviously massive win. It's been fascinating seeing the journey that he and Liam have been on. And so another edition coming out as Liam Brody prepares to try to qualify for Roland Garros. My, John tweets a lot. I genuinely, when I first joined, it's a bit of an anecdote. Genuinely, when I first joined Talking Tennis, I turned notifications on for the Twitter account. I had to turn it off after about a month, which means that shouldn't discourage you from following on Twitter, because John usually finds the best content to share with you. You can just follow Talking Tennis, to be honest. You probably just generally get a good balance of what you can come up. Here we go. This is what we need. Thank you, Mr. Producer. So yes, we've already had Mario and Damien's show, which I apologize to them. I hadn't realized they're usually after me in the schedule, so I was a little confused. But you can go back and watch it if you haven't already. I assume for our kind of US followers, you probably haven't seen it yet. Dave Samel is coming out on Wednesday. That's going to be fascinating. The French Open draw is happening at 2 p.m. Central European time on Thursday, and John and the team will be covering that. So 1 p.m. GMT. I reckon it's going to be, those of you in Las Vegas, that's going to be 6 a.m. If I've done my maths right, yes, 6 a.m. Start. So probably about 9 a.m. for those of you on the East Coast. Plus, yes, French Open preview for the WTA draw on Saturday, and an ATP preview as well on the same day before play kicks off on Sunday. So I'm really excited to go through it. Obviously, everything's going to hang on the draw, where everyone's going to be placed, and what kind of wild cards might get thrown up. And I'm going to be picking out some key matches that I am going to be making time to watch and look forward to from that draw, which is only imaginary, sadly, at this present moment. But Thursday, we will know who is set to face who at Roland Garros. So we have we've had a few comments from you guys. I think we're in for a very exciting few weeks of tennis. I've loved doing these WTA shows. We're going to be keeping going with these, hopefully. Okay, yes. Max is planning on sleeping through the draw. Probably would be doing the same, to be honest. If it was that early, and just waking up and finding out. We may also be potentially got some interesting interviews lined up. So stay tuned to see what else we give you. By the way, when I mentioned before about Roland Garros champions who have won it 3 times or more in the Open era, I saw some people trying to put a list together. So I thought I'd just confirm that the list of people who've won women who've won 3 or more Roland Garros singles titles were in the Open era: Margaret Court, Chris Evert, who is the record leader with 7, Monica Seles with 3, Arantxa Sanchez Vicario with 3, Steffi Graf with 6, Justine Henin with 4, and of course, legendary Serena Williams with 3. So we've got lots of great content coming up on Talking Tennis for Roland Garros. I hope I've excited you all about that. To quote one of my favorite television series, are you excited? Because I'm definitely excited. So I'll see you all tomorrow for my final power rankings for the WTA. I will see you on Saturday to go through the draw. And who knows when else I will see you. But it's always lovely hanging out with you all. Take care and keep talking tennis.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.